Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, join my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Wilscroft.
What a good book. How to make good home movies.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. That is a book right there.
That is
a book right there.
This has got to be from the 50s?
From the
early,
I was going to say,
60s?
where did you get that? Where did you get that?
I think it was at like a antique store. But
that is a cool what okay, I'm going to ask you, what's inside that book? Like, what do they talk about, like how to make movies back then?
There's actually some informative information about like depth of field, like framing. It's surprisingly informative.
It's surprisingly informative about how to make, but like, are they talking about it in terms of like, this is how you can capture your vacation moments, or like this is how you can make a movie?
Home memories kind of thing.
Ah, gotcha. You know, make sure things are in focus. That's the big one.
Yeah.
That's, I think, pretty much it. It's just lit properly, in focus. If you got those two, you're about 90% of the way there. But this week, we're taking a little bit of a detour from our normal everyday episode where we cover a movie or something like that, and we're getting it down to one of these topic episodes, which is always a fun one. I know, John, you love these a lot, right?
Topic, yeah, they're neat, you know, because we get to kind of deep dive into all kinds of avenues of a subject instead of just like one film, or so I enjoy it.
Yeah, I've noticed you enjoy the topic ones as well as like the filmmaker retrospectives. I am more a fan of the film like breakdowns, like the actual like go into one movie. But these are fun because they get us thinking, thinking like we're in a book, thinking about the story. Because we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about movies that, in the rare instance, actually supersede the book. I say rare instance because it is a rare thing, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, because Brian, how many times have you heard somebody always go, "The book was better," even before they've seen the movie? They just know the book was better. And I understand that mindset, because if you're taking something that's like a 900-page book and you're adapting it for film, and 1 page of a screenplay equals 1 minute, that would be a 900-minute movie. You gotta really chop and dice some stuff up. It's adapting from a different medium. It's why I'm a big fan of Broadway shows, but I'm not a huge fan of movie adaptations of them typically. Did like Wicked though, because it's not the medium it was originally intended for. But every once in a blue moon, there is a filmmaker that takes an interesting premise and one-ups the author.
Yeah, I know for me, I am not a gigantic reader. I will be completely honest with you and with everyone who is listening or watching this episode after the fact. I am not a big reader. I get my enjoyment out of watching movies, watching TV. That's what I find enjoyable. But my wife is a massive reader. Like, she puts me to shame in the reading column. One, because she it will be reading something, or she'll be listening to audiobooks. I have done some audiobooks, so like that is something that I do enjoy. Probably because I do the podcast too. Like that kind of that primes you for something other than music. But I do find it interesting when adaptations do occur, because I find it interesting to see how somebody else interprets the story that we're all reading or we're all listening to. Like, collectively, we're all getting something from a literary source that we're taking in, but then how does a filmmaker take that knowledge and that story and morph it into something completely new, right? And so it's always interesting to me to see, where does the bias of the filmmaker come in when they are adapting something that is coming from a literary source. That is always interesting to me.
Oh. See, I'm a little bit different. I'm quite the literature bug, I do enjoy my reading. I try to read at least 20 pages a night of whatever I'm reading at the time before I go to bed. I've been very much into nonfiction, I'd say, for like the last decade or so, but I have read quite a few books that have been adapted into movies. You know, some, well, most are much better. But yeah, as Brian and I are going to explore, there are a few where even though the book was really popular, and well, except for one or two of mine here, their books are really popular, but the filmmakers went, I think we could do better here.
Yeah, and there are also some books like one of the ones that I have where it's a very very old book and its adaptation has spawned multiple different versions. That it's interesting to see how far it's almost like a game of telephone if you think about it, where you've got a story and like it distills down through multiple people through decades and you get a different version each and every time. So I have one of those on my list. But I didn't come up with any particular like rhyme or reason why my list is put in play. I chose 6. John, how many did you choose? I'm just curious.
6, but some not honorable mentions in terms of books that are better, but things like I have one where I'd say the book and the movie are exactly on the same par.
Yeah.
So just kind of things like that. But yeah, 6 for the actual true
Okay.
list. Yeah.
Okay. So I tried to keep up with you because we usually do top 5 and
Yeah.
then you come in and be like, I did 1.
Yeah.
Eh. Because I gotta do extra.
Hey, look.
So
Well, yeah, Rosemary's Baby, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like these are better books. I've read tons of books that were movies, but the books were better. But
yeah.
so,
Yeah, that's funny you mention those too, because that when you look up movies that are better than the book, oftentimes they point to those two right there, like Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist. They always go to those as like, oh yes, these are far superior. But I can't I didn't speak to that because I not nearly as familiar with the book material, so I didn't include that in mine. But it is funny how popular culture will say like, oh yes, the movie versions are better. But all right, do you want to kick this off here?
let's do it.
And of course, we have people, if you are coming in watching us on the live, hey, thanks for doing that. Let us know what your favorite movies that are better than books are. We had one person who just disappeared. The minute I say
books.
that, boom, books, ew. But John, do you want to kick it off?
Yep. All right. So one thing that I find very interesting is the Da Vinci Code. This isn't on my list. This is just a few other notes that I wanted to mention. Because when I read that book, like Dan Brown is a bad writer. Like he does not know how to write. Like the book came off to me like a screenplay and moved like a screenplay. Then I'm like, well, I bet this will make an even better film. Not that the book was very good, but then it didn't, and I'm like, oh wow, this C plus book is better somehow than a movie when it was custom built to become a movie. But anyways, enough shitting on Dan Brown there. One that is so hard to say because the book is just so much more detailed than the movie, but still fairly similar, is American Psycho.
Good pick.
It's
Really
that one.
Good pick.
I'm like, I didn't know what to say because like there's just so much of Patrick Bateman in there just talking about the most benign and vapid stuff, but it's like that's his character that wouldn't translate well to film. That I'm like, well, I could see how some people could hate the book but enjoy the movie, because and the book is surprisingly much gorier and much more
Oh yeah, the book
profane.
goes into like necrophilia and cannibalism and all sorts of weird shit. It's pretty hardcore. That automatically none of that is getting put in any movie. Like we think it's that the film version of American Psycho is pretty bad, but if you read the book version's like whoa, leaps and bounds.
But a few that I think don't count, Mean Girls and JFK, because I thought about those, and but they're both based on nonfiction that was reworked into a fictional thing. Mean Girls is based off of a book by Rosalind Wiseman, who was in a documentary of mine. Plug. But yeah. something on Wannabes. I'm forgetting the title now, but like, yeah, Tina Fey took this.
Yeah.
It was like kind of a educational book on what it is to be a teenage girl and turned it into a comedy film. I mean, and JFK is based off of two nonfiction research books on the Kennedy assassination, wrapped up in the Jim Garrison investigation,
Right.
and turned that into a film.
Great film.
Yeah.
Great film. Like it's a great film just because it does I think feed into people's insecurities when it comes to the government and believing the narrative and also our beliefs about, you know, the JFK assassination. It's a great movie.
Yeah, the government killed its president. Anyways,
That's how I really feel, John.
kings are killed, Brian. It happens. Yeah, but there's one example that I'd say is exactly the same. You get the same experience from reading the book that you do watching the movie, and that is Silence of the Lambs.
Damn right.
It is
Damn right.
It's one of the most faithful adaptations I have ever seen of a book. The only difference is, and I understand why they had to cut this out because it's not good for movies, but there is a huge section of the book where Clarice is talking to an expert on sexual identity. And unfortunately, well, I won't use their word back then, but you know, she's learning about people who are transgendered. And she learns that about the actual science behind that and how Buffalo Bill is absolutely 100% not that. He's just a crazy person who wants to make a skin suit. Like, so the author went out of his way to make sure that he wasn't demonizing the transgender community. But that scene would just absolutely bog the movie down. So I understand why they didn't put it in there, but I also understand the uproar and backlash that the movie ended up getting because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing too where like you have to keep in mind that this was 91 was Silence of the Lambs, right?
Yep.
Was it 91?
Mhm.
Yeah, so like you have to keep in mind the time period, and I think that people's understanding of the transgender community might be lacking back then. So it's like I mean, we've already talked a little bit about in previous episodes how Hollywood kind of has a history of making that community feel like the other and feel like the villain. Yeah, oftentimes. So I'm not surprised that they kind of omitted those sort of things from the film.
They're victims or villains. Yeah,
Yes.
that's how it's depicted. Yeah. All right. So moving on to my actual list here. Number 6 is now 2 times the book title is different. So it's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but the book is Who Censored Roger Rabbit.
Ah, that's an interesting one. So I didn't know that Roger Rabbit was based off of a book. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Most people don't because it's not really a very good book. It's a lot darker than the movie is. And there's like so many thoughtful changes that they added to the movie. Like in the book, which works for a book, but not look that great in a film, is the tunes don't actually speak. They have word bubbles that come over their heads. And after they talk, the word bubbles fall to the ground and smash all over the floor. And so it's like, yeah, we're going to have Roger and the rest of them talk in the movie. There's no references to like Mickey or Bugs or anything like that. That was just added for cinema purposes. The whole flow of the story and ending are much darker and sadder. It is very much follows in the path of classic noir, where they made the film experience a lot more fun. And interesting, in the book, cartoon characters can die as easily as humans can. It's
so there's no dip.
There's no dip. In fact, cartoon characters are able to make temporary copies of themselves if they ever need to be in violent scenes in movies, so the copy can be killed.
Wow, so they kind of pull a Prestige, basically.
Yeah,
they pull a Prestige and make a copy of themselves. You're the one that dies today because of this horrifying scene in this cartoon. So like every single time that like, you know, Wile E. Coyote like dies, That's a copy. That's not really him.
Right.
Is that what you're
Yep.
saying?
Yeah. And it's actually the plot revolves around that Bugs. Sorry, I'm thinking Roger is dead, and it's his copy who's trying to solve his murder before he disintegrates.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
great. Yeah, I can see why that would not translate well to a film.
And there's a magic genie, Brian. There's a magic genie. It's just it
There's
goes
a
off the rails.
magic genie.
Yeah.
It's just there's some books that are too fucking weird, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
This one's one of them.
Yeah.
That's too fucking weird for a movie. So they changed it to something else.
I will say this, the writer of the book did say that I don't think he went so far as to say he prefers the film, but he loves the adaptation of it so much that he cashed in on it, writing follow-up books to basically the movie. And the first book ends up being a dream Jessica Rabbit had. Like he used that cop out. It's like, oh, the first book was just a dream that Jessica Rabbit had.
So-
now I'm going to write the movie.
So what you're saying is
character.
he pulled a Mario Puzo, is what you're saying. He kind of pulled a Mario Puzo. Like he made the book, and then he's like, well, I'm going to do the screenplay, and I'm going to, Paramount's going to want a third movie, so I'll just cash in that way. That sort of deal.
It reminds me a little bit of what Michael Crichton did, where Lost World, the book, is a sequel to the movie, not even his own book.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Lost World, the book, isn't much better than the movie.
Nah.
I
I was
mean,
going to say Lost World, the movie, is not very good.
it has some classic Spielberg shots, but yeah, as an overall narrative, no, not really.
Let's be honest here. None of the Jurassic Park movies have really lived up to the promise of the first one at all. Like I don't see any of them that have been like, oh yes, this one carries the banner. Like we got the one coming up this summer. I haven't even seen the trailer for it. Like I haven't even seen the trailer for it. I don't really care to. I know we're gonna review it for this podcast, but I'm just like, whatever.
Brian, Black Widow leads a team to go to another super secret island where they have the
Is that
most
it?
dangerous dinosaurs, and they have to investigate and get stuff, and then they get
at
attacked by
what
dinosaurs.
point- John, at what point do we maybe stop fucking around with dino DNA? Like, can we just stop? This is like as bad as the multiverse.
It's a get out of jail writing free card. It's like, oh, this is also another super secret DNA
Super
strand
secret.
that John Hammond created that you only learn about now when this movie's happening.
Oh God. Oh jeez. All right, what's next?
Number 5 here, Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's another one that I think just lends itself well to the filmmaker's interpretation of the source material. You named 2 movies that were basically made by the same person, so I'm not surprised.
That may happen again, but no, but the book is written. I mean, granted, yes, Forrest Gump the movie is in a way it's first person perspective, that when he starts to tell the story, it goes, I would say, into third person, even though Forrest is still telling the story. The entire novel is from Forrest's point of view. So there's a lot of like run-on sentences, misspelled words. Like it's kind of ugly to read because it's being written from Forrest's point of view. And this Forrest is quite aware of how dumb he is, and
Really?
he's very negative about it, very surly about it, hates his life. There's a point where Forrest goes into space with a monkey because
What?
yeah. Well, see, Forrest Gump in this world he's more like Rain Man. He's more of an idiot savant, unlike
Okay.
in the movie where he's just really dumb.
So it's kind of like a Mr. Magoo. He just happens to end up in places that are, historical.
He ends up working
relevance.
for NASA because he's super good at math. Like that's the only
Okay.
thing he can do. Otherwise, he's a complete imbecile. He becomes a professional wrestler in the book. So there's just like,
Oh, jeez.
I mean, the book takes place around the same amount of time as the film, but I don't know how Forrest was able to do all of the things he did in the book. I mean, there's only so many days in a year.
There are. Does he still do the running thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. He's got to do the running thing. That's what he's known for.
And I mean, there's, just the small changes that I think Roth is the screenwriter. Like he doesn't meet Jenny until high school. But in the movie they meet when they're little kids. Um, all kinds of small differences in there. And the screenwriter kept all the good stuff from the book and threw out all the junk and changed the tone quite a bit. So just like Who
I
Framed Roger Rabbit,
I still believe that Jenny is the true villain of that story. I still I still I still believe Jenny's the true villain.
Jenny is the product of abuse, the poor thing.
I know Jenny's the product of abuse, but at the same time, like, she kind of takes advantage of this hapless idiot.
Yeah.
And this hapless idiot's like, okay, Jenny.
Hey, Forrest, now that you're a Apple stock billionaire, will you raise my kid while I die of Hep C?
Yeah. It's I still think she's a villain.
Number 4 here is a book that probably most people won't know, and that's Nothing Lasts Forever, which was adapted into a movie called Die Hard.
Oh, there you go. I was wondering if Die Hard was going to make your list. I was wondering.
It's like Nothing Lasts Forever is very much a pulp detective story. I mean, it still follows the premise of people attacking this high-rise building and a cop in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of situation, who has to maneuver around the building. So it has like the same central premise, but he's like much older. Like he's kind of like a Clint Eastwood age detective, and he's there like to visit his daughter, not his estranged wife. And there are a handful of similarities, but enough differences. Like it's really the charm of the movie that's missing from the book. Like the book is very by the numbers, kind of, where there's something that's just so clever and like charming about the film version of Die Hard that the book is just does not match.
Yeah. Calling out our one audience member, Corey. Hello,
friend.
Hello, friend, coworker.
Let us know if there's any movies that you think are better.
What movies? And this again to our live studio audience here of 1 or 2 now of what movies are better than the book. Let us know in the chat. We'll put it on the screen and mention it in the podcast. But hey, cool. We got peoples.
Yep. Here's a fun trivia fact for you, Brian. Do you know who the first person they had to offer the role of John McClane to?
I feel like I should know this, but I don't. I'm blanking on it.
Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah, that's. I remember like he really wanted it, but then I think it was just it languished for so long that they had to go. They went with someone younger, and honestly, it was because of Moonlighting that Bruce Willis kind of got the role for it.
Well, it's also like a contractual thing because the author of the book had other movies that were adapted into major films. That the John McClane character is a character from another book. He's not called John McClane in those books, but so like 20 years earlier they adapted one of his books and Frank Sinatra played like this grizzled detective. And because it was the same character, they had to offer it to Frank Sinatra, who was like in his 70s first, before they could actually start shopping it around to people that were more age appropriate. And thank God he just passed.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely, like, I can't imagine Frank Sinatra playing John McClane.
No.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. All right. What's next up on your list?
All right. Here's my controversial take. This is I'm
concerned.
Brian, you mentioned it earlier, but I'm sorry. I'm going to stand by this. The Exorcist. The movie's better.
I mean, okay. Okay. I mean, the Exorcist is the fucking Exorcist. I think both can exist, and I think both are kind of roughly around that level. It's kind of like the same thing with Psycho. Like a lot of people say, like, oh, Hitchcock Psycho is better than the book. I also look at it as like that's chicken the egg territory there, right? Like a lot of what makes The Exorcist work is from the book.
Yeah. But it's funny you should mention that could have ended up on my list. Yeah, because I did read um the Psycho novel, but there's a interesting sequel where there the Norman Bates character gets out of jail and goes to Hollywood to try to stop a movie adaptation of his actions. So it's kind of like a meta kind of thing. That would have been an interesting Psycho 2 if they had followed the novel. But
That would have been a good one.
uh,
Oh, our studio audience says something. How about Fight Club?
I okay. I haven't even finished like ruining all my street cred by saying this with Exorcist. I'm gonna say this right now. I don't really like Chuck. What's his ass? I don't like the books or the
Paula
movies.
Hanuk?
Paulo, yeah.
Is that his last name?
Something along those lines, yeah. But I don't really care for Fight Club, the book or the movie. I read them both. I don't care for him much as a writer.
Corey says the movie was better.
Yeah, I I might
I
agree with that. Yeah. But again, it's
yeah,
hard for me because I don't really like either.
I was gonna say I liked the movie a lot for mostly for the stylistic reasons. Like that's for me
Oh,
it's
sure.
pure
Yeah.
stylistic reasons. I mean that was Fincher, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's why. I love Fincher's work. So yeah. But I don't have any of the base. I've never read the novel, so I don't know, you know.
Don't waste your time.
Don't waste your time.
But yeah, just to finish up on Exorcist because they're very similar, but I think that anybody who claims like, oh, the theater of the mind, like I could imagine something much scarier. I'm like, then what William Friedkin put on screen, a genius of film. I don't know if you can. I think that it really allows itself for the visual medium than just reading it off the page. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, John, my imagination is better than any film I could see." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine if you really do believe that." But I think there's something much more powerful of watching a possessed little girl stab herself in the vagina with a cross and actually see it than read it off the page.
That is true. And I mean, one, I dislike William Friedkin because of his, tactics on set
Yes.
of The Exorcist. I've made that well known that I dislike his how he treated Linda Blair and basically made it where she's partially crippled. Um
Yeah.
that's true story. But yeah, I think The Exorcist is one of those ones that definitely can lend itself better to visual. And I mean, Jesus Christ, you had people who were fainting in the theater, and that was at a time when that never happened at
Yeah.
all. You don't get that reaction at all from a book. Like no one reads a book and says, "Oh yeah, I read this book and now I'm terrified." And Corey calls it out here. She slept like a mummy for years after watching The Exorcist. Yeah, that's something.
One of my high school English teachers did say though he read Red Dragon, who's same author as Silence of the Lambs, and he said that like he would like kept hearing things in the backyard every night because I mean the movie's also about somebody who breaks into families' houses and murders them while they sleep. So I guess I can kind of understand that.
Yeah,
Uh, number two, I have Jurassic Park.
I mean, of course. Of course. I mean, that's what a lot of people point to the movie of version of Jurassic Park over the book.
And we're highly, I mean, critical of certain aspects of Steven Spielberg, but I think I can speak for Brian, and I know I can speak for myself. And the guy is a genius. I'm not saying he's not. The guy knows how to
No,
make a movie. Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. There's very rarely been a filmmaker in modern time that has been one so consistently successful with every piece that he puts out other than Steven Spielberg. Like, can you think of a movie where he kind of like shit the bed in terms of a film? It's very rare,
Yeah.
you know, very rare. Even like I think it's one of those things where because he was responsible for originating the blockbuster. Like that's a lot of people forget. Like it's not just that he made these, legacy films that like are real like Jurassic Park, and like Catch Me If You Can, those sort of ones that kind of ring true down. The man's responsible for Jaws.
Hmm.
You wouldn't have the modern blockbuster if it weren't for two movies, Jaws and Star Wars. Those two.
What the hell's a Star War?
A
I don't know what you're
star.
talking
Yeah,
about.
I've heard that it is a certain war, a skirmish, if you will, that
Of
is
the stars. Yeah.
of the stars
Yeah.
in a
Um,
galaxy far, far away.
but in classic Spielberg style, a lot of the characters are, in my opinion, the book kind of wooden and not as likable. And
Mhm.
he really fleshes them out, makes them much more interesting. John Hammond is just an inexcusable scumbag in the book. And I like the idea that he's kind of more of a dooful, wishful thinker. You know, he doesn't realize that he's in over his head until it's too late, and then kind of comes around. I think is a much more interesting character development there.
So he's not a grandpa like Santa Claus character.
Oh,
And
he's a grandfather, but there's like in the book, like he doesn't even care that his grandkids might be dead. He's just more interested in like saving the park. Like,
yeah, that doesn't really translate well over to a movie.
the
Of like, I care more about my velociraptors that I spent a bajillion dollars on than my kids potential my stepson, not stepson, but my grandkids potentially being killed by my own creations.
interesting. Like the book flips Lex and Tim. Tim's older and into computers, and Lex is younger and more like sportsy and outdoorsy.
Mm.
So it's like just minor changes like that don't really affect one thing one way or another from a book to a movie, but just interesting. Those kind of choices. But one thing that drives me insane about Michael Crichton, and I read a lot of his stuff because when I was younger, I was very much into sci-fi and thriller stories, is that he just gets so bogged down in the science. And I want to be like, dude, I get it. You've researched stuff, you know things, but I don't need like 25 pages of DNA schematics. Like
You don't?
I'll
You
take your
don't need
word
that?
for it. Yeah.
You don't need that? What about realism, John? Okay? What about realism? We want to sell that the dinosaurs are real.
Except for the fact that the half-life of a DNA strand from a dinosaur is already passed and would no
Just
longer be
ignore
viable.
ignore that. Ignore that. Michael Crichton didn't research that part.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but just finding out that like the dinosaurs are breeding in the book, for example, is they are getting the correct count of the dinosaurs on the island, but it's Malcolm who figures out that their calculating way of doing things is incorrect, and he has to explain to them like this complex math ratio that says your numbers are actually off and there's more dinosaurs out there than you think. And getting there is like 20 pages, and it's just like, can't we just have Dr. Grant come across some eggs like we do in the movie to realize that the dinosaurs are breeding? Do we really
well, that's
need
one of
this?
that's one of the things that honestly every adaptation of a novel or a short story is always going to have to contend with is how do you take what is fully explained in a chapter and make it work for a visual medium that you have
Mhm.
to you've got x amount of minutes, right? So it's a thing where I know a lot of people they complain when a movie gets when a book gets adaptation, excuse me, when it gets adapted, every time there will always be someone in the comments going, well, they didn't include this and this. It's like, dude, what do you expect? They got what, 90 minutes on the low end to tell this story. On the high end, 2.5 hours. So yeah, certain things are going to have to be either condensed or dropped because that's the nature of adapting something to another medium. And you can't have inner monologue. You can't have spend 20 minutes talking about the schematics of DNA because it doesn't lend itself well to keeping people engaged in the visual medium.
Yeah, because I think I read or heard somewhere uh a while back that like the reason for movies being 2 hours isn't for any truly narrative reason. It's just that's how long most people can sit still before they have to use the bathroom.
That makes sense.
That's why
I mean,
movies are 2 hours. Yeah.
back in the day, we had the what I think they should bring back is the intermission.
Yeah.
The
Go
intermission.
Take a Dunsky and get some jujubes.
Yeah, I think they should bring the intermission back personally, especially for movies that really push that 2.5 hour mark. Like I mean, when I saw Dune Part 2, I was like, This was one you probably could throw an intermission in.
Oh, The Brutalist had an intermission. I was so thankful. Because like I got to get up and go to the bathroom. I was hungry. I got something at the concessions. I'm like, this is what's up. Movies could use this.
Right.
But number one, hands down for me. I saw a few of these. I saw the movie first and then read the book, which I consider jacking off after you've already came. It's
Ouch. That's kind of raw.
So, but long story short, is I read the book after I saw the movie, and I'm like, this is just not as good as the film, and that's Jaws.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, Jaws. Every time you talk about movies that are better than the book, Jaws always comes to the top of that. And again, it goes back to Spielberg.
Yeah.
You know, it
My
goes
top
back
two
to
are him. Yeah.
That's it. That's what I'm telling you. It goes back to his ability to, with that movie in particular, make us care about these characters who are in actual danger. Right?
Oh, and Brian, that's the thing. The book, everybody sucks. Brody sucks. His wife sucks. Hooper sucks. Quint is not interesting at all. He's more like Captain Ahab style. He doesn't have. He's not charismatic.
But does he suck too?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Everybody sucks.
There's no likable characters. Like Spielberg even said when he read the book before signing on to be a director, he said, "I was rooting for the shark because everybody sucks."
Yeah. No, Corey put the shark emoji. Thanks, Corey. Shark emoji for life. But yeah, no, yeah. I agree with you there. Again, I'm not a big reader, but from like looking at synopsis of the book and everything, yeah, I think the movie's got the edge.
Well, here was the biggest drawback for me for the book. Like they just keep failing and then they just go home at night. And I'm like, no, the movie has it right. Like they can't leave the boat until they succeed or fail. So it's for them to just like, could you imagine the movie if they just went, well, let's go home to our wives and children. We'll pick this up tomorrow.
Well, it breaks the tension. That's the problem. It does. It breaks that tension. The minute that they're on the boat and you know they're out there to go kill that fucking shark, you know that it's do or die, that either they're going to die or the shark is going to die. Like that's what the stakes are set up the minute that the orca sets out for sail. So like it sets the stage where you can't go home. You can't leave until the work is done. And then what happens between that? And that's when you get like the crazy story of Quint surviving.
Not in the book.
Of course it's not, right? No. But like that scene sets the stage for how deadly this shark is. Like that scene right there is core to this movie working, because it gives us visually in our heads as we're listening to this story of this is what sharks can do. They will fuck you up and they'll eat you, you know? But yeah, if that's not in the book, it's not going to work.
Well, the ending of the movie too, with a cool explosion, it's just Brody in the water and the shark comes up to him and just dies because of wounds that it suffered. So it just kind of comes up to him and goes,
"That's not cool enough.
Dead."
Yeah, plus, that's not nearly as cool enough.
Plus, fun fact for me, the movie ends on my birthday, but the book doesn't. So bonus points for the movie.
Bonus points for the movie. Yeah. Bonus points for the movie. Really good picks. Really good picks. My picks are not nearly as good or as thought out as yours are. I can tell you that right now.
Don't put yourself down. Let's hear them.
Okay. So again, I don't have any particular order here, but my first one is one that I remember reading this book in high school because I was a big goth kid back in high school, the high school days. And it's kind of like required reading that if you're a goth kid in the early 2000s, late 90s, that you are reading at least this book once, and that is Dracula. Okay. So
coming out hot.
Coming out hot. Dracula, and specifically the 1992 version of Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola version. Um, and I picked that one, and here's where I say, like, Dracula has been adapted out the ass.
Mhm.
I mean, 2 months ago we did a review of Nosferatu, which was an adaptation of Dracula. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not. Yeah, stand on
Yeah.
ceremony here. It is just Dracula.
It's Dracula. Okay. So, the story of Dracula has been adapted out the ass. If you read the novel, I'm sorry, it's boring as all fuck. It's not its fault. It's just boring. It's very boring.
For those that don't know, the style of the novel is like in letter form. It's Harker.
It's diaries. It's in letters and diaries. Yeah.
So it's a unique choice, to say the least.
It was a style that was popular at the time. So I almost look at it as like if someone 20, 30 years from now were to look back and say, well, why did everybody, do dancing videos on their phones and have them vertical? It's a style that is kind of in line with what was popular then. But if you try to read it, now, and you're like, why is every chapter someone else's letter? And you're getting these bits and pieces of the story that really comes together more or less in a movie version. And I picked the Bram Stoker's Dracula 1992 version because it is so much closer to the novel than other adaptations of Dracula.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, except maybe Blackula.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I look at it in terms of, like, there are parts from the 92 Dracula that are pulled from other things, namely the 1979 version of Dracula and also the Jack Palance version of Dracula. So like there's other mixtures, but the core of it reflects more on the novel than other versions have. It's not based off of the Broadway play like the Bela Lugosi Dracula. This is pulled mostly from the novel with some liberties taken in how it views Dracula as a more romantic anti-hero than anything. I kind of viewed him as an anti-hero in that. But I love how stylistic it is. I love the performances of Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder. Not so much Keanu Reeves.
Blue Inferno.
I know. But I love the visual effects in it because of how unique they are. I've talked about this before. The visual effects of Bram Stoker's Dracula is an example of what is not done anymore. And that is in camera, naive, practical effects that you just don't see anymore. So like, I love it for that reason. Plus it's honestly like, it's really a good watch. So that's my first one that I really think like outshines the book.
Oh, well, and some of those practical effects are downright magic tricks. Like
they
how they pull
are.
them off is incredible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Francis Ford Coppola's son, did the production design and ran the second unit for the VFX. So, I mean, he did this with the idea of how can I do magic tricks that were similar to the stuff done at the dawn of cinema and 1898. So like what you're seeing is what George Millet did, but it's now done on a modern stage. So it's really a unique time capsule of that. But that's my first one. Let's see here. What else do I got? Next up, I have this is one that I know you're gonna laugh at. Total Recall.
Yeah.
I fucking love Total Recall. And I'm talking Total Recall. I am not talking the Colin Farrell version. Okay, I am talking specifically the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Paul Verhoeven masterpiece. I think that's what we'll call it, masterpiece. It's a mess and a masterpiece at the same time.
That is a great phrase. Yeah.
Masterpiece. I'm gonna copyright that. But so good and so many levels. And and like the novelette that I think it's based off of, which I think is a Philip K. Dick story, you literally have bits and pieces taken from it, and that's it. Because what Paul Verhoeven weaves It's so much more interesting and so much more fun. That's the way I find Total Recall is. It's a fun movie filled with weird mutants, um, great one-liners, Arnold being Arnold, and see you at the party, Richter. So many good lines.
And don't forget Johnny Cab, the best character
The
in movie
best
history.
fucking scene. It's hard for me to pick a favorite because as a kid, I always bust out laughing during the Johnny Cab scene just because, he'd say, that'll be 18 credits, please. And he says, eat me, dickhead. And then he freaks out and explodes.
Arnold schooled him so hard he died.
Yeah, Arnold schooled the robot so hard that he died. Can you imagine if you had Uber that was like a Johnny Cab? Eat me, dickhead. Hope you enjoy the ride. It explodes. I gotta wonder, it's like, is every Johnny Cab, if you don't pay the fare, do they just explode? Do they kill you? Is that the future?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, because he said he
Elon
wasn't
Musk
paying.
time.
Yeah, give it time. Give it time. But I just love Total Recall.
What's interesting about your choice there, Brian, is that like they are so radically different. It's a very interesting choice because, like, yeah, you're right. Paul Verhoeven just basically made his own movie with a couple of things compared to that, novella.
Well, it's a thing where I fundamentally believe that trying to be beholden to the source material can at times be hindering to creativity when you're doing an adaptation. Okay, so like I look at what Francis Ford Coppola did with Dracula. I look at what Paul Verhoeven did with Total Recall, and I'm like, they are reading the same thing that I'm reading, but they are using their own lived experience, their own experiences and imagination, and taking that and morphing it into something new that's not beholden necessarily to the bounds of the source material. So I respect that because I think that's an exercise in creativity. There is an exercise in, how can you take someone's ideas and turn them into something else that is tangentially related to it, right? But would not exist without that foundation,
And that is very interesting, like, to say if you haven't read the book and other people around you are just so adamant about the changes, but like for somebody like me, say if I haven't read, the book for a certain movie, I'd be like, well, I just enjoyed it. Like when I went to see Dune 2, I went with Christine and our friend Alex, and Christine has read the book. And Alex I think, read it like a quadrillion times. It's one of his favorite books. And the two of them are just going back and forth saying, like, I like this, but I wish they had done this. I wish they hadn't taken this out. I wish they hadn't moved this around. And I'm just like, I haven't read Dune. So I'm just like, I liked it. None of these complaints you guys have affect me whatsoever.
Yeah. No, if you argue with Dune heads, it'll be a long, long time because like I've read the book, which is when I listened to an audiobook of it because that is a massive fucking book. But when you talk to Dune people, they immediately go into two camps of, do you take the sequel books that came after the fact, after Frank Herbert with his son Brian Herbert, do you take those as canon or do you not? And it gets into a whole big mess. So it's not even worth trying to entertain that. Just be happy that you enjoyed the movie, John. That's literally it. Yeah.
I liked it. And I also got great sexual satisfaction from the popcorn bucket.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
While you were watching the movie.
Hey, where's Zendaya?
Shy Halud.
Yeah. Why has Zendaya been on screen for a while?
Ew.
Oh, I got salt in my urethra.
You had to have some gross moment during our very cerebral talk about books and movies.
Yeah.
All right. So what else do I got? All right. Next on my list is another Philip K. Dick story that turned into a movie, and that is 2002's Minority Report. Oh, so good, but very different.
I very much enjoyed the film. I have to say, I have not read. Is it? I can't. Is it
It's
called
called
Minority
it's
Report? The
called
Philip
Minority
K. Dick
Report.
version? Yeah, I've not read the story from it.
It's very different in one. John Anderton is like an overweight, like 50-year-old man in the book. And he's also like the creator of the pre-crime program. Whereas in the movie, it's Tom Cruise in his mid to late 30s. And he is, basically the facilitator of pre-crime, but he is not like, in charge. So there is a little bit of swapping there. I guess for me, the reason why I like the movie over the book is just that, for me, the mystery, the kind of noir type of feel that you get with the movie, where it is a mystery that's unraveling, and also like there's subtext in it when it comes to like the societal bounds of your right to privacy, and whether or not, like, if you intend to cause a crime, does that make you guilty if you never follow through? Like, those sort of questions get offered up in this movie that aren't really 100% spelled out in the book. The book does spell out the whole idea of, are you responsible for crimes you have not yet committed? And what happens if you have the ability to actually see the crime and you know about it? Are you responsible for it? Do you follow through with it? What's the choice? So, like, from that point on, it's interesting, but I love the mystery side of the movie, and I love the visuals. Again, that's another Steven Spielberg movie, so I'm not surprised in the least.
Yeah.
And one that a lot of people forget that he did. Like, they forget that he did Minority Report. But yeah.
Well, there's something you said about like kismet in terms of timing, because perhaps the Philip K. Dick story was ahead of its time, but talk about just pitch perfect timing for that movie to come out in a post 9/11 world where we have the Patriot Act, and whatever you say, the government may be coming to your door because you could be with the terrorists. So the film is just hit at exactly the right time for the world we are living in.
Oh, very much. I mean, that was 2002, so that was even, I think, before the Iraq War really ramped up. So I mean, there's a lot in there that you watch that movie now, you're just like, oh yeah, no, we don't have the stores that identify you, but your phone will identify you, and know what you're shopping for before you even like shop for it. And that whole right to privacy thing is kind of out the door. That really was predicted in that movie. But I love Minority Report. It's one I haven't watched it in a while, but it's one where I was thinking about, like, what movie I think really superseded the book. Minority Report kind of is at the near the top there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. Now I feel like I need to go back and watch it.
There
It's
you
been
go.
a while.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Next up on my list is one that our lone audience member Corey did mention, and I didn't want to put it on the screen yet because this is one that is controversial, and that is The Shining. I'm talking specifically about the Jack Nicholson, Kubrick Shining.
Right, not the made for TV.
Not the made for TV, which the made for TV is more in line with the book.
And yeah, that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, but yes, The Shining, I believe that one is far superior than the story.
Again, yeah, there's a lot of changes made there, not just in the initial script, but then Kubrick on the fly on the daily changing up the story. So yeah, that was again a situation where I had seen the movie and then read the book, and I'm like, these are like the central premises are there, but these are radically different presentations to this. And I have an interesting relationship myself with Stephen King. Like, I think he's kind of the king of the B plus players. Like, he's very much just a pulp writer. Like, he's not, I don't consider him a serious writer. He's not with James Joyce and Ernest Hemingway, but he's probably the king of pop culture novelists. So I don't think very many of his books are overly great to begin with. So when you got a master like Kubrick who can take a B plus book, maybe turn it into an A movie.
Are you saying that Stephen King is the Lloyd Kaufman of literary sources. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's taking too much away from Lloyd Kaufman.
Love Uncle Lloyd on this show. But Corey called it out here. Book was a snoozer. I agree. Not nearly as fun. I guess for me, like the reason why I listed it is the amount of nuance that is in The Shining, that there's so many different layers. Like I remember a couple years ago when the documentary Room 28, was it Room 287?
237.
237. When that came out, that it was a documentary that literally like looked at The Shining and tried to peel back it like an onion on all of these different subtextual layers that this film has. And I don't think the book ever went that far. And I think that was something that Kubrick brought to it. He took this story and was like, how can I translate this thing into a movie that is more than just a horror movie? Like, how can I do that?
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of subtext to the Stephen King thing, and I'm not even saying that as a mean thing. Like, it's a ghost story.
Yeah.
It's a haunted hotel. And he tells that story.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as you're probably noticing with a lot of my picks, they are looking at the individual filmmaker and saying, okay, what can you do differently with this material? Not what can you do the same, but what can you do vastly differently with this material? Use this as a starting point. So like that's kind of what I've looked at it. And like The Shining for me is one of those ones that's like, man, so haunting, fucking scary, but also makes you think. Once you like watch it like a couple times and you then watch it again, you're like, oh yeah, there are a lot of things in here that I completely went over my head, but it's a good movie to kind of find those pieces in after the fact. And that's a Kubrick thing right there.
Yep.
All right. Next up on my list, I have my number 2 spot is, we already mentioned this once, and that is American Psycho.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book is very, very tedious. Like there's like a 40-page chapter of him trying to get dinner reservations. And I know what Bret Easton Ellis is doing. Like I get it, but it can get to be a lot.
Yeah, and I really believe that what was the filmmaker, Mary Harron?
Yeah,
was I believe the filmmaker behind it.
Yeah,
I think she brought a lot to making that movie work and making it work for as a film rather than just a book. And you combine that with Christian Bale's performance, and it's just magic. Like it really is. Like, you know, I think the fact that they really zeroed in on him and did add in some of those elements of like inner monologue, which I'm one of those guys who's like, I don't like voiceover if you don't have to, because you know it's a movie.
It depends.
Show me the thing. But I think like those little bits of voiceover, like the card scene, which is iconic, you know, the business card scene, and you're seeing him talk in his head about, oh, look at that. Is that a watermark? Is that bone? Look at that lettering. It just tells you so much about how his psyche is so fractured. And I do think that the movie does lose a little bit of the social commentary that is found in the book. I think the book does a better job of really illustrating this is what the capitalistic 80s looked like, Reagan's America. Whereas the movie, I think, is more personal on Patrick and more an exploration of this descent into madness rather than this person's descent into madness is an after effect of Reagan's America.
Yeah.
You know, but the book does a better job with that. But yeah, that's why number 2 pick is American Psycho.
Gotcha.
And then coming out number 1, you knew this was coming, John. And that is, of course, the dual partners of Dune Part 1 and 2.
Wow. Okay. I thought I was going to piss people off with The Exorcist, man.
No. Okay.
We're going to get the hate mail from the Dune book people.
I don't care. I don't care. Because here's the thing. After I saw Dune Part 2, I went and was like, I'm going to listen to the book. And I listened to the book. and I like the book, but there is a lot. There is a lot that goes into the book that is really, really designed for world building things. But I think what the movie does really well is translate all of that and distill it down into one cohesive stylistic story that hits at the core tenets of what the book is about. Right. And that was important to me. And that's not why I chose, like, I didn't choose David Lynch's Dune, because that is,
Yeah.
As much as I love David Lynch, R.I.P. I'm sorry, it's not a great adaptation of the book, but Denis Villeneuve's, I'm fucking up his name, Denis Villeneuve's adaptation is really coming from a place where he's a fan first, and on top of that, he is trying to visually build this world that's cohesive from part 1 to 2. So, and also hitting on the core tenets of Paul Atreides isn't the fucking hero. Like, that was what I wanted to see, is he's not the hero. And the movies, both of them, do that in spades. If you want something that's more accurate, the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, that one is more accurate. Not nearly as good, though.
Well, they had $10 and a cup of coffee to make that movie.
They had more than $10. Okay, they had a couple people there. Children of Dune has a very young James McAvoy in it.
Oh,
yeah. He plays no, he doesn't. I mean, he does get blue eyes because he plays Paul Atreides' son.
Okay.
But no, he plays Leto the second, Paul Atreides' son. And Corey Potes is here. Crime and Punishment is light reading compared to the Dune book. I agree. I think when I got the audiobook for that thing was like roughly around 13 hours. And John's disappearing for half a second there. What are you getting? Oh, no one wants to see that. We're cutting to me. All good now? Yes. John actually has Crime and Punishment. There you go.
I was like, I think that's right over my shoulder. It was really hard to get up there, and I'm sorry for shaking the audience around who's watching the visuals. So
yeah, but no, Dune part 1 and 2 for me are my go-to of a visual smorgasbord, if you will, that really takes that story and does the impossible. I mean, Dune is one of those books that for years was told as like, you can't adapt this. It's not possible. There's too much world building. There's too many characters. How are you going to care about all of them? And I just think like what the filmmaker does behind this is really build off of what I think, Game of Thrones has done, where you got multiple characters, but you're able to follow them. So it's building off of that kind of track record and giving us something that is really, really good. I can't talk enough about Dune part 1 and 2. I know part 1's boring because it's a lot of world building, but part 2 kind of, steals the show.
Well, I'll enjoy the hate mail that's coming in right now for
I don't care.
Exorcist take and your Dune take. So
I don't care. I mean, come at me.
Come at
me, Dune heads. Well, I'll go Shia LaBeouf on your ass, okay? Oh man. Okay. Well, as we're wrapping up here, I gotta ask you a question. Why do you think that people, for the most part, view the book as superior to movies? Why is that kind of the modus operandi thinking?
As I mentioned at the top of the episode, I really do think it comes down to certain things are much more difficult to adapt to a different medium. If you have a novel that's 800 pages, you're going to have to sacrifice a lot to make that a movie, because you're not going to have an 800-minute movie. I don't even know how many hours that is, but point being that you're going to have to take a lot of things out, move things around, for even a book that's like 300, 350 pages, so I think that it's just one medium to another that is going to affect that. But I also do think there is a lot, when I mentioned with Exorcist, is theater of the mind. I think you have the ability to read the page and put anybody you want in that role, even yourself. If you want to pretend you're the character, you can imagine the hotel or the water, the riverbed or what have you, and you've made the movie in your head in a way so that when you go and you see that it's been chopped up and moved around to fit a 2-hour narrative film, and it's not exactly as you pictured it in your own mind, it's never going to live up, I think, to what you imagined.
I'm in the same boat on that.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's my main reason why I think that books continually have the edge when it comes to movie adaptations, is that we as people, John, as you brought up, our connection to that theater of the mind, what we have personally like thought up in our brains, what that story looks like, who those characters are, our experiences shaping what we are reading, that is kind of personal to us. And I don't think it's fair to the filmmakers to have to compete against that. I really don't. And that's why I like to see what other people come up with when given the same material. You and I could read the same story, John, and in your head, you're going to be like, this is what this character looks like, right? And in my head, I'll be like, this is what this character looks like, and this is what this character does compared to what that. And like, that's just the human experience there. It's an expression of it, right? Because that's all it is when we take in stories, especially written ones, we are shaping what we are reading based around who we are and what we've been through. And I love that. But it's not fair to the movies. It just isn't. Good take on this stuff.
Yes.
This is it's a good topic episode. Great topic episode. Let's see. From our audience of one, Corey, what's your thoughts on the struggle between books and movies? Let's see what we got here as we wait for the delay to kick in here. Let's see.
While we're waiting for him to come in, just oh, sorry. I saw Corey. Yeah. Crime and Punishment is 670 pages. Yeah, good luck
Jesus
adapting
Christ.
that into a movie. Yeah.
I'm sure someone will try.
I wouldn't be surprised. Is there a Crime and Punishment movie? I'm gonna look.
Is there a Crime and Punishment movie? You're gonna look this up right now?
I'm gonna look it up while we're waiting to hear from Corey.
Okay. If not, if Corey's not got anything, that's okay. I can always cut this part out. And I probably will cut this part for the podcast people. For the live show, yeah. There we go.
Oh, apparently a foreign adaptation of it that was 3 hours and 44 minutes long in 1975.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Damn. That's rough. Very rough. Yeah. Well, with that said, I think we're going to wrap things up here. So, John, where can they find you at on the internets?
You can find me in a good book, just not Jaws. No, you can find me at Facebook and Instagram, and you can find me over at JDubs Video Nasties. Have my Michael Uslan interview out now, the executive producer of all the Batman movies, talking about all the inner workings of getting Batman to the screen, what it was like to actually do the productions on him, the legacy of him. And I'm currently working on an episode on Wicked Wild Wild. No, not Wild Wild West. Men in Black. So
you're not going to do Wicked Wild Wild?
My question is, why does it suck so bad?
Oh, shit. All right. Well, Corey actually did respond. So here we go. We got, It's true. I used to read books and picture the story, and then the movie never held up.
Yeah.
That's it, right? It never works. Well, this has been fun. Do me a favor. If you have liked this episode, if you've liked this podcast, do me a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app. You can do that by jumping, if I'm able to bring it up right here. Why is it not popping up? There we go. You can go to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow and follow us on your favorite podcast app of choice. You just click that button and boom, you can follow us on all of them. We got them all listed there, right there for the taking. And of course, if you're watching us here on YouTube, hey, do me a favor and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, because that is how this whole thing works. That's how our episodes actually grow. And I see you all in the actual studio setting. I can see you all in the stats. I see you're watching it, but you're not following it. So please do me a favor and follow us on YouTube and share these episodes out. And with that said, we will see you next time.
Hey, there's no bare ass in this story. 1 star.